Hi students, the next important chapter in business law is consideration. What is consideration? Consideration is something in return. Quid pro quo. That is something in return. What is it something in return? That the parties entering into the contract must get some benefit from the contract. That is called as consideration. That something, that benefit, it is called as consideration. The benefit derived by the parties in case of a contract, it is called as consideration. If there is no benefit in the contract, then there is no contract. The benefit is called consideration. That is, if I am ready to sell my house for 15 lakhs to some party, some other person, and the consideration for the other person is my house, and for me it is 15 lakhs. That is something in return for my house. That is called as consideration. Definition: when at the desire of the promiser, the promisee or any other person has done or promises to do or does something, such act is called consideration for promise. You see the definition: when at the desire of the promiser. Promiser is nothing but the offerer. When the promiser has desired something and the promisee or any other person has done that or promises to do or does something, that something is called as consideration for the promise. Next aspect is essentials of valid consideration. The essentials of valid consideration were: first one is every agreement must be supported by consideration. If you are entering into an agreement, definitely there must be consideration. Without consideration, there is no contract. Next, second one, it must move at the desire of the promiser. That is, the consideration must be fixed by the offerer only. That is, the promiser must fix and no other person has the right to fix. Next, it may move from the promisee or any other third person. The consideration may come from the promisee or any other person, it is not a matter, but it must be fixed by the promiser and done by the promisee or any other person. Next one is, it need not be adequate. The value of the consideration, it is not at all important. There must be something, but it is not necessarily adequate. Next, it may be past, present, or future. Past consideration, present consideration, and future consideration. These are the three types of consideration. Past is consideration before the promise. Before the promise itself, if something has been transferred, then it is called as past. Present is consideration at the time of promise. Future is consideration after the promise. This is called as past, present, and future. Next one is, it must be real and lawful. Consideration must be real and it must not be illegal, immoral. Next one is, it must not be illegal, immoral, or opposed to public policy. That is, the consideration must be lawful. Last one, it must not be something which the promiser is already bound to do. The promiser is ready to do something for the contract. Then if something additional is done, then it is not a consideration. This is the essential regarding the essentials of valid consideration. The next aspect in case of consideration is no consideration, no contract. That is, every agreement must be supported by consideration. Without consideration, there is no contract. So, if there is no consideration, there is no contract. But in certain cases, if there is no consideration, there is also contract, there is also a valid contract. That is the exception to the above rule. No consideration, no contract. There are certain exceptions. Always, if there is no consideration, there is no contract. But in exceptional cases, the contract is valid without consideration also. Number one is love and affection. If the parties entering into the contract by way of love and affection, one party has done to other something and another party has not done to the other something, then it is called as, it is also valid in certain cases. That is, if the properties were transferred by the parents to their son through will, then it is by love and affection the parents are doing. It is also valid. Next, voluntary services. Donations given to a poor people or orphanage voluntarily. Then the party is donating, they are not expecting something from the orphanage. That is voluntary. It is also valid. Then promise to pay time barred debt. If a debt has been given to a person and it is time barred, that is 3 years is the limitation period for any debt. If the 3 years is barred and the debt remained unpaid, after 3 years if it is repaid, then it is valid. There is no if there is no consideration at that time after 3 years, it is not a problem. Then gifts. If you are giving gifts to your friends, then it is also valid. You are not expecting something from them. Then agency services. Agency is doing services on behalf of others. It is also consideration is not required for these agency service. Next one is stranger to contract. What do you mean by stranger to contract? Stranger is a person who is a third party who is not connected to the contract. He is called as a stranger to contract. That is, it is a general rule that only the parties entering into contract can sue and be sued. The third party who is not connected to the contract is called stranger to contract, and they cannot sue in case of contract. This is called as stranger to contract, and the stranger to contract generally cannot sue, but in certain exceptions they can sue. That is, number one is beneficiaries in case of a trust. Trust is a association formed for doing some welfare activities. Then who is a beneficiary in case of a trust? The person who is getting benefits from the trust, they are called as beneficiaries. They are third parties to the trust, but they can sue if the benefits are not received by them properly. Next, female members in case of HF. HF is a Hindu undivided family. In that Hindu undivided family, the female members born in that family, they are third parties to the family. Automatically they will go to some other house after marriage. So after marriage or for their marriage, if anything is not done properly to them, then they can file a case against the Hindu undivided family. Female members in case of HF can sue the HF if the marriage expenses were not met out properly. This is the case regarding the stranger to contract can sue the exceptional cases. This is regarding consideration. The important questions in this chapter is define consideration, explain its essentials, no consideration, no contract, explain essentials or exceptions. Next one is stranger to contract can sue, explain. This is the important question regarding this chapter. If you are interested in my videos, you can like my video, share my video, give your valuable comments and subscribe my channel. Thank you. The next